Welcome to Historical Music Critics. This episode is titled Ruthlessly Read Rock and Roll, a reading of Boris Gorobenchikov's band Akvarium and its role in musical dissent in the late Cold War. Today, our critics are all relative contemporaries that bring their own unique view to Akvarium and Gorobenchikov's music. We cannot be sure that the three of them were once in a room together or interacted together, but we can be sure that their views on Akvarium and Gorobenchikov's music would be extremely interesting. A folk, rock, and reggae-inspired band with poetic lyrics? Well, let's find out who these critics are. First, we have Václav Havel, famous Czech dissident and former president of both Czechoslovakia and the Czech Republic. Second, we have Valdemar Friedrich, also known as Major Friedrich. Friedrich is the founder of the silly, yet very effective Orange Alternative movement in his native Poland. Finally, we have former American diplomat George F. Kennan. Kennan worked as the ambassador to the Soviet Union and Yugoslavia, advocating for the containment of Russia. Kennan has also worked for the Institute for Advanced Study at Princeton University. As always, here are the rules. 2 songs by the band, group, or singer in question will be discussed by these historical figures. We will play them once, and after each song is played, they will be discussed, critiqued, and rated by each historical figure. The rating will be determined by how historical music critics think the historical figure would like it, listen to it, or approve of the song, music, and its message. Let's begin. Hello everyone, my name is Valdemar Friedrich, but you can call me Major. It is an honor to be here on Historical Music Critics with my contemporaries Václav Havel and George F. Kennan. And today we're going to be talking about the Soviet band Akvarium, also known as Aquarium in English. Their main singer-songwriter, Boris Gorobenchikov, will be discussed in length today. And although Gorobenchikov is the lead singer of the band, their membership continues to vary as they're still making music well into the 2020s. And even in the viewer's present day, Gorobenchikov continues to make dissent records. Yes. Hi everyone, my name is Václav Havel. Gorobenchikov has been a part of the band since 1972, and as the announcer reminded, he's bounced around the Western genres of folk, rock, and reggae, and he doesn't limit himself when it comes to his dissent music. And honestly, I really like that about him. I mean, Gorobenchikov is tying himself to the counterculture movement, which has a severe lack of emotional intelligence in it. I don't think by speaking his opinion he's lacking exactly. I mean, his music is breaking genre boundaries, and it's providing a lot of nostalgia for Russian audiences that grew up with this kind of music, and it references people, places, and things in poetic form that they would be quite familiar with. I mean, he's no Chekhov or Tolstoy. Like, there's no Russian poetry in this. Almost at all. All right. Let's listen to our first song. This song is from their 1983 album Radio Africa. Gorobenchikov provided the guitar and the vocals, and it was recorded at the Leningrad Rock Club. The song we'll listen to is called Rock and Roll is Dead. Okay, before we get into all of this dissent music, we need to look at the history of the Soviet Union in 1983. So in 1983, it was Yuri Andropov's time as the General Secretary of the Soviet Union, and it was also the year that the world almost went into nuclear war. The Western forces were performing a drill called the Able Archer Drill, and the Soviet Union took it as a spark to prepare for war. It was all a false alarm, just like the Cuban Missile Crisis, but it really almost sparked a whole nuclear war. In Poland, 1983 was also a really important year. It meant the end to martial law in Poland and the visiting of Pope John Paul II to his native Poland. Poland was also blessed with the winning of the Nobel Peace Prize for the Solidarity movement. That's interesting because the 1980s was some of the most controlled years in Czechoslovakia, and dissidence was prominent, but there was still a lot of crackdown from the communist government. All right, let's listen to Rock and Roll is Dead by Akvarium now. Lyrics have been provided for us, and when we discuss them, we will talk about them in English, so don't worry about that.
тех, кто шел с нами, за тех, кто нас ждал, за тех, кто никогда не простит нам то, что рок-н-ролл мертв, а мы еще нет. Рок-н-ролл мертв, а мы. Те, что нас любят, смотрят нам вслед. Рок-н-ролл мертв, а мы. Рок-н-ролл мертв, а я еще нет. Рок-н-ролл мертв, а я. Те, что нас любят, смотрят нам вслед. Рок-н-ролл мертв, а я.
Wow. I liked that. That was awesome. I would have to agree.
Ugh.
All right, let's talk about these lyrics. I'm going to read off of the chorus, which goes like this. Rock and roll is dead and I'm not yet. Rock and roll is dead and I am. Those who love us look after us. Rock and roll is dead and I'm not yet. What do we think about this chorus? Rock and roll being dead could mean a lot of things. I mean, the 1980s was a time of change, and rock music kind of fell off of the Western charts to make way for the new age, the disco, the dance music. So it could have been that. Also, the 1980s saw a lot of change and saw the death of one of the pillars of new rock and roll, John Lennon, because he was shot and assassinated in New York in 1980. Could Grebenshikov be alluding to Lennon's death, maybe? Yeah, he says that he's dead and that then he's not. This flip-flop that he's going with, I mean, could this be the limbo that the rock and roll musicians were placed in Soviet Russia?
Possibly. I'm just going to put aside my own views right now, just for the sake of conversation and for historical music critics. But I think that this could address the fact that rock musicians had to put all of their music on tapes and record it all and disseminate it by hand to bypass the Soviet Union's propaganda and censorship laws. All of the channels of censorship refused to disseminate rock music before Gorbachev's perestroika and glasnost calls. They did this as well with Western music. They had to record it on the radio and then disseminate it by hand. So the idea that Grebenshikov is dead and not dead could be the fact that his records and his voice and his music was both possessed and not possessed by citizens of the Soviet Union.
Well, let's look at the next few lines of text before the next chorus. This is from my lyric sheet. From now on, time will flow in a straight line. Step up, step sideways, their world is behind them. I burned the lives like a pile of newspapers, only dirty asphalt remains. What do we think of this? I really like the imagery that comes with this set of lyrics. Could it be talking about the normalization of communism for these generations of Russians and those that reside in Central and Eastern Europe?
It could be talking about normalization. Or it could be talking about the fact that the pesky counterculture movement continues to grow despite everybody's best efforts. They're completely wreaking havoc on the entire system, and they have such extremist tendencies that they're supposedly speaking against the extremist tendencies that the Soviet Union has. I don't understand it. I really don't.
Okay, let's keep it to the music. I think that indeed this music could speak about how members of the counterculture movement of the Soviet Union are burning the lives of those desensitized to the communist regime and setting them free. This reminds me a lot of the text that I wrote in 1979, The Power of the Powerless, and how ideology can be a mask that you hide behind. So the communist ideology is the mask in which the individuals hide behind so that they can create an excuse for not liking rock music and not liking the counterculture movement. And by continuing to produce and continuing to circulate their rock music, Akvarium and Gorbachev are exposing the system and the ideology as a game and as a way of control, which is exactly like the greengrocer example that I have in Power of the Powerless. Like it's exposing the system as a pure game and nothing else. It's very similar to what you've done in Poland, Major. Yes, the various ways we show our dissent, and we show it through the highest quality socialism. We show it through comic art. I like to call it socialist surrealism, because in Poland, what we do is we graffiti over the cover-ups of the Solidarity movement's graffiti, done by the Communist Party. So the Communist Party covers up the Solidarity movement's graffiti, and we draw these little dwarves on top of it. And the Communist Party goes out of their way to continue to cover them up. So we show the silliness of the communist regime through our own silliness. If they want to continue to cover up our various graffiti through all of these means, they're wasting money. They're showing as if they have nothing better to do than cover up the graffiti that we do. Exactly. You expose the game as a mere game. The game that consists of pretending to have authority over a dwarf drawing on a building. We're ridiculing the communist regime one dwarf at a time. Exactly. Quickly before we vote, I really want to address the last verse before the reiteration of the chorus. Let's look at these notes. Elbow to elbow, brick in the wall, we stood too proud, we paid triple. For those who walked with us, for those who waited for us, for those who will never forgive us that rock and roll is dead. Does this remind you of anything?
Listeners, we cannot account on if these historical figures would know of this similarity, but we thought it right to insert it anyways.
This part of the song, these lyrics remind me a lot of Pink Floyd's Another Brick in the Wall. Not only does Akvarium's 1983 lyrics resemble the 1979 song through the lyrics Another Brick in the Wall or Standing Tall or Standing Proud, I think it is, as well as the idea that they're like marching. There's that kind of the same beats per minute. There's the sound of marching in both of these pieces. My thoughts exactly. What do you think, Mr. Kennan?
I gotta give you that. I can hear the similarities, but I still don't like it.
All right, on that note, let's vote. I gave this song a 9.0. I think this song does a great job at conveying the counterculture movement in a subtle but a really entertaining way. I also really like the allusion to Pink Floyd. I really like that it was not necessarily intentional, but Gorbachev is attempting to disrupt the game and reveal it through music. And while I might not listen to it in my spare time, I still really appreciate what Akvarium is doing with this piece. I give this song a 9.2. I share the same ideas and thoughts as Mr. Havel, but I ranked it slightly higher because I would probably listen to this in my spare time. I also like the playful back and forth of the chorus. Rock and roll is dead and I'm not yet. Rock and roll is dead and I am, you know. Anyways, Mr. Kennan.
I give this song a 4.0. These gentlemen are speaking out against the Soviet Union completely unnecessarily. I am a fan of Russian prose and poetry as much as the next person, but what they're doing is they're trying to destroy the system, and I am completely not a fan of that. I will give you the fact that they are attempting to use humor and allusion to point to various pop culture movements and other things in the West, but it lacks emotional intelligence.
All right, let's listen to the next song. Let me quickly look at my notes here. So this song is from Gorbachekov's album Radio Silence, which was released under the English spelling of his name without the Akvarium name attached to it. Although this is not a credited Akvarium album, of course, it's an extremely important album for what we're talking about when it comes to dissent music. The song Radio Silence was recorded from May to August 1988 with a small stint in February 1989, and the full album was released on June 13th, 1989. The late 1980s was full of peaceful protest and not so peaceful revolutions. viewers, leading to the free elections in countries such as my native Poland, as well as the Velvet Revolution in Mr. Havel's country, Czechoslovakia, which brought Mr. Havel to the Czechoslovak presidency. And although Radio Silence was recorded before the dissolution of the Soviet Union, it reveals a lot about Soviet rock and a lot about rock and roll and its scene in the late 1980s. Due to Gorbachev's call for perestroika and glasnost, the West became very, very interested in Grebenshchikov's music, and he actually went to the USA to produce the album Radio Silence with David A. Stewart, who's known by the UK band Eurythmics. So, if we're all ready, let's listen to Radio Silence and let's see what we think.
Suddenly it feels like the new year, like a million miles away from here. I can see some kind of light here, although I can't name it. But I can talk about the moonlight, I can talk about a wild child. You know that we're wild one, dancing alone in the middle of the world. Oh, speaking tales about silence, about radio silence, or some kind of asylum in the middle of the empty field full of strangers. Tales about silence, about radio silence, or some kind of asylum in the middle of the empty field full of danger. It's strange, I can feel like I'm a stranger. I feel like I belong here, feel like I've been waiting for a long time, and now I can tell you some stories. Stories about a madman, stories about a green child. You know that one that dances alone in the middle of the world. Speaking tales about silence, about radio silence, or some kind of asylum in the middle of the empty field anywhere. And I can give you some silence, some radio silence, or some kind of asylum in the middle of the empty field if you want it. If you want it, only if you feel like it. If you feel like asking, I know we can work it out together. Suddenly feels like the new year, like a million miles away from here. I can see some kind of light here, although I can't name it. And I can talk about the moonlight, I can talk about a wild child. You know that real wild one, dancing alone in the middle of the world. Oh, spinning tales about silence, about radio silence, about some kind of asylum in the middle of the empty field full of strangers. And I can give you some silence, I can give you some radio silence, I can give you some kind of asylum in the middle of the empty field if you want it.
This one sounds much more Western to me.
This certainly does sound more Western than the last album. Well, this was Grebenshchikov's first foray into music without Akvarium, and he recorded in the United States. Though he did have some bandmates help out with the album, but of course David A. Stewart produced it, so there's that UK, US, Western feel to it.
I can hear the influence that Western music and David A. Stewart had on Grebenshchikov in this piece of music. It sounds like Eurythmics. It's less new agey and weird. It's more dance like. It's more disco-y in a sense. It has that Western feel to it.
I definitely agree with that. It's lighter. It has lighter lyrics at the beginning. It's you're able to dance to it. Major, do you want to look at the lyrics? Yes, let's look at the lyrics. So from a post-Soviet perspective, these are actually really interesting. So let's take a look at these lyrics. It suddenly feels like a new year, like I'm a million miles away from here. I can see some kind of light here, although I won't name it. I want to talk about moonlight. I want to talk about that wild child, you know, that real wild one, dancing alone in the middle of the whirlpool. So that's the first verse. Do we have any thoughts on that? Well, when you think about it, this was recorded in 1988 in the United States, as well as in the UK and Canada, but still, this one was, I believe this one was recorded right in the United States in New York. So, talking about a new year, a million miles away from here, could be talking like he's visiting the US for the first time and he's witnessing democracy and the freedom that democracy allows artists. Honestly, that could very well be true.
Again, putting aside my views for the sake of conversation, I can see how Grebenshchikov is inspired by the United States in the lyric, "The Real Wild Child." That real wild child could stand for the American rock musician, the British rock musician, the musician that's allowed to speak their mind and say their truth in their respective country.
Yeah, I really like that. It's that kind of idea that the rock musician's not restricted. It can be completely free to say or do as they like, whatever they please. The chorus tells us this as well. Let me quickly look at these lyrics. Spinning tales about silence, about radio silence, about some kind of asylum in the middle of an empty field of danger. So this spinning tales about silence, this radio silence, all this, this emphasis on silence. Could this be talking about the Soviet Union's previous silencing of musicians? Could it be about the Western view that the Soviet Union is silencing these musicians and these artists from speaking their mind? I think you're on track about the silencing aspect of it. In 1976, the Czech government went after a band from Czechoslovakia called the Plastic People of the Universe, and they went to trial in Prague to say that they were bad-mouthing the communist regime and that they were disturbing the peace, which is absolutely crazy. It was more of an attack on freedom of expression rather than attack on the communist regime, just because the communist government had some bad feelings that it attempted to silence the PPU. And it, again, revealed the game that they're trying to play. The totalitarian system needed to continue to be uncontested, and the PPU, in arresting them, unfortunately, the communist regime actually revealed that it was, again, just a mere game. Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Mr. Havel. Just as the Polish communists attempted to silence the Orange alternative, we continued to push to be heard through every and all means.
It's interesting that these lyrics in this song was recorded before 1989, because 1989 for the Soviet Union marked the cracks in the foundation, and 1991 was the fall of the Soviet Union. So these lyrics about a new year, the real wild child, the empty field, it almost sounds like a prophecy. It almost sounds like he's like predicting the future when it comes to the fall of the Soviet Union.
I can see that too, especially with the line from the second verse. I feel like I've been waiting for a long time, and now I can tell you some stories about the madmen, stories about the dream child, you know, the real wild one. When looking from a post-Soviet Union perspective, it's as if he's actually predicting the downfall of the Soviet Union and how perestroika and glasnost will affect the Soviet Union and its control over Eastern Europe. I'd have to agree as well. This dance-like and new agey song is both telling the story of the Soviet Union, but also, oddly enough, predicting its downfall.
I like how poetic this song is, but that's it. It's still demonstrating against the governing body, and it's pushing back against the system that they've lived under and that they were born under. They are so ungrateful.
I give the song a 9.5. I like how dancey it is. It has a listenability that is really accessible to the common listener. I really enjoy the metaphors that come with it as well. There's very simple poetic lyrics that you have to like really look at. It looks and feels and sounds just like a regular like Western song. But when you look closer at it, you're actually listening to how restricted artists and musicians in the Soviet Union feel. Gorbachev, by recording this album in the US, the UK, and in Canada, he had a greater ability to speak his mind and open himself up as an artist to new things, new ideas, new sounds. And that's why it might sound like a Western album and a Western feel, but it still has that line of Soviet descent, because the only way that he was able to record this and the only way he was able to have this sound, discover the sound, was by leaving. I give the song an 8.7, just slightly less because it doesn't really convey the counterculture movement as much as the last one, and as much as I would have wanted it to, per se. But, I mean, it was recorded in 1988 when Gorbachev was actively practicing perestroika and glasnost, so I can't fault it too much for that. I also really like the idea of radio silence, the silencing of musicians, the silencing of artists, and I'm sure it resonated with a lot of individuals and continues to resonate with a lot of individuals that were, or continue to be under communist regimes. Mr. Ken, what do you feel? To tie it all together, to finish off our lovely discussion.
I begrudgingly give this song a 5.0.
A passing grade? Nice.
It barely passes. It has that identifiable dance-like beat that's very Western, and I can get behind it a little bit, but it's still too, like, it's new agey, and it just represents the radical left that is happening in the United States. And the lyrics, I mean, one doesn't even look close at all to realize the true intentions behind these words. They're trying too hard to disguise their intention of trying to break down the Soviet Union. It's the new Western feel, courtesy of David Stewart of Eurythmics, is very similar to the new left movement. And again, I don't like it.
Well, folks, here you have it. Thank you so much for watching and listening to this episode of Historical Music Critics. We'll see you next time for the review of Black Sabbath songs by Lyndon B. Johnson, Richard Nixon, and Gerald Ford. Keep on rockin'.